Male nipples. Male nipples exist as a byproduct of shared embryonic development pathways between the sexes. During early stages of fetal development, specifically in the first 6 weeks, all human embryos follow a default template that is essentially female. During this period, nipples begin forming on the chest regardless of whether the fetus has XX female or XY male chromosomes. It's only after this initial phase that the influence of the Y chromosome begins to express through the SRY gene, which triggers the development of male reproductive organs and secondary sexual characteristics. However, by the time male-specific traits start to form, the nipple structures are already in place. There's no evolutionary pressure strong enough to remove them, as they do not interfere with male function or survival. So, they remain as harmless anatomical features. In biological terms, nipples are non-functional in males because they lack the hormonal environment required for milk production. While both males and females have mammary glands, male glands remain undeveloped due to low levels of estrogen and progesterone. In rare cases, such as with certain hormonal disorders or the use of anabolic steroids, men can develop a condition called gynecomastia, which leads to swelling of breast tissue and sometimes lactation. Despite being vestigial in terms of function, male nipples retain the same tissue structure and sensitivity as female nipples. In other mammals, including primates, male nipples are similarly present and non-functional, showing that this trait is not unique to humans, but part of a broader mammalian pattern. From an evolutionary standpoint, male nipples are neither beneficial nor harmful. They simply persist because natural selection acts more strongly against traits that cause dysfunction than those that are merely unnecessary. As such, they're a perfect example of how evolutionary biology often leaves behind neutral remnants that once served, or could have served, a purpose in a different biological context. Wisdom teeth. Wisdom teeth, also known as third molars, are the last set of teeth to erupt in the human mouth. They typically emerge between the ages of 17 and 25. In early human ancestors who consumed a diet of raw plants, nuts, and uncooked meat, these extra molars played a crucial role in grinding tough food. At that time, human jaws were broader and more robust, providing enough space to accommodate 32 teeth, including the wisdom teeth, without causing crowding or misalignment. Over time, as humans began cooking food and processing it mechanically with tools, the demand for heavy chewing decreased. This shift in diet contributed to an evolutionary reduction in jaw size. However, the genetic blueprint for wisdom teeth remained. In many modern individuals, the jaw no longer has sufficient space to support these extra molars, leading to impacted wisdom teeth. An impacted tooth is one that fails to fully erupt through the gum line and often becomes stuck against another tooth or bone. Impacted or partially erupted wisdom teeth can cause several complications, including pain, gum infections, cyst formation, and misalignment of adjacent teeth. Because of these risks, wisdom teeth are frequently removed via oral surgery. Interestingly, a significant percentage of the global population, especially in East Asia, has completely lost the genetic trait to develop wisdom teeth. This suggests that natural selection is slowly phasing out the third molars in modern populations. Despite being considered vestigial, the presence or absence of wisdom teeth is not uniform. Some individuals develop none, while others develop 1, 2, 3, or all 4. The variation reflects a transitional state in human evolution, one where the organ is no longer needed but not yet fully eliminated. Appendix. The human appendix is a small, tube-shaped organ attached to the cecum, the beginning of the large intestine. In modern humans, it measures about 5 to 10 centimeters in length and is often considered a classic example of a vestigial structure, an organ that has lost much of its original function due to evolutionary change. In herbivorous mammals like rabbits, koalas, and some primates, a much larger and more complex version of the appendix plays a critical role in digestion. It houses bacteria that help break down cellulose, the tough carbohydrate found in plant cell walls. This microbial fermentation process is essential for extracting nutrients from high-fiber plant diets. Early human ancestors who consumed more raw, fibrous vegetation likely relied on a more functional appendix for similar purposes. As humans evolved and began cooking food and consuming a more varied omnivorous diet, including meat, processed starches, and cooked plants, the need for cellulose digestion diminished. Over time, the appendix shrank and became less essential to survival. Today, it serves no critical digestive function. Some researchers suggest the appendix may have a secondary minor role in immune function, particularly in early childhood. It contains lymphoid tissue that can support the development of gut flora and immune responses. However, this function is neither essential nor unique. The same immune benefits can be provided by other tissues in the gastrointestinal tract. Clinically, the appendix is best known as the site of appendicitis, an inflammation that can cause severe pain and, if left untreated, life-threatening rupture. Removal of the appendix, appendectomy, is a common surgical procedure, and people live perfectly healthy lives without it. Evolutionarily, the appendix illustrates how an organ that once played an important digestive role can become obsolete in modern humans, retained only as a low-risk anatomical leftover. Third eyelid. The plica semilunaris is a small crescent-shaped fold of tissue located at the inner corner of the human eye, near the tear duct. It is the remnant of a once functional third eyelid, known as the nictitating membrane, which is still present and active in many vertebrates, including birds, reptiles, amphibians, and some mammals. In those animals, the membrane serves as a protective, translucent shield that can sweep horizontally across the eye, protecting it from debris, maintaining moisture, and allowing vision even while shielding the eye during activities like hunting, flying, or swimming. In humans, however, the nictitating membrane has been reduced over evolutionary time to the immobile and functionless plica semilunaris. It no longer moves or covers the eye and serves no protective function. Its only observable role today is contributing slightly to tear drainage by helping direct fluid toward the tear ducts. This minimal utility classifies it as a vestigial structure, one that has lost most or all of its original function. The presence of this tissue in humans is a clear indicator of our shared evolutionary ancestry with other vertebrates. It stands as a molecular and anatomical fossil, offering a glimpse into a time when our ancestors may have benefited from an extra layer of eye protection. In rare developmental cases, humans can be born with a more prominent third eyelid or even retain partially mobile structures, though these are anomalies and do not restore the membrane's lost function. From an evolutionary perspective, the third eyelid in humans exemplifies how natural selection can reduce or deactivate organs that are no longer necessary for survival in a new environment. Tailbone. The coccyx, commonly known as the tailbone, is a small triangular bone located at the base of the vertebral column. It is composed of 3 to 5 fused vertebrae and represents the vestigial remnant of a tail. In many other mammals, this region forms a fully functional external tail used for balance, communication, swatting insects, or climbing. In early primate and pre-primate ancestors, tails played a significant role in locomotion and stability, particularly in arboreal environments where balance was critical. These ancestors used their tails for counterbalance during tree movement and, in some species, for grasping branches. As humans evolved to walk upright, bipedalism, and adopted a more terrestrial lifestyle, the need for an external tail disappeared. Over time, natural selection favored a shorter, less prominent tail, eventually reducing it to the internalized structure we now call the coccyx. Although the coccyx no longer serves its original purpose, it retains a few minor functions. It acts as an attachment site for several muscles, tendons, and ligaments that support the pelvic floor. These include the gluteus maximus and levator ani muscles, which are involved in posture, walking, and maintaining continence. The coccyx also helps support a person's weight when sitting, especially in a reclining or leaning back position. Despite these secondary roles, the coccyx is prone to injury due to falls or trauma, leading to a condition called coccydynia, chronic pain in the tailbone area. Surgical removal of the coccyx is rare, but can be performed if pain becomes debilitating and unresponsive to treatment. Rare genetic mutations can result in humans being born with an extended tail-like structure, known as a human vestigial tail. These cases are extremely uncommon and are usually corrected surgically. They highlight the coccyx's evolutionary origin and its potential to partially re-express ancestral traits under rare developmental conditions. Body hair and goosebumps. Humans, unlike most mammals, appear relatively hairless, but this is a misconception. The human body is covered in roughly 5 million hair follicles, just like other primates. However, the hair that grows from most of these follicles is fine, short, and lightly pigmented, referred to as vellus hair, and is therefore barely noticeable. The thicker, darker hairs found on the scalp, underarms, and pubic regions are called terminal hairs. In our distant mammalian ancestors, body hair played an essential role in thermoregulation. Thick fur provided insulation in cold environments, repelled moisture, and even offered some protection against sun exposure and parasites. In primates, body hair also served social and communicative functions. Raising the fur could make an animal appear larger during confrontation or threat displays. As humans evolved, especially with increased sweating capacity and the use of clothing, the need for a full-body fur coat diminished. Natural selection favored individuals with less dense body hair, possibly due to better cooling efficiency or reduced parasite loads. Despite this evolutionary reduction, the follicles themselves and their associated reflexes remain. One such reflex is piloerection, commonly known as goosebumps. When we're cold or experience fear, tiny muscles at the base of each hair follicle, called erector pili muscles, contract, causing the hairs to stand upright and the skin to form small bumps. In animals with fur, this response traps more air and provides better insulation. It can also make an animal look larger when threatened. In modern humans, goosebumps are largely useless. They no longer contribute meaningfully to heat retention or defense. Instead, they serve as a vestigial physiological reflex, a holdover from a time when our ancestors depended on dense body hair for survival. In some people, body hair remains more pronounced due to genetic inheritance. Regions like the arms, chest, and back can show variability in hair density, often influenced by ancestral climate and hormonal differences. However, this variation still has no significant functional benefit in today's environment. Palmar grasp reflex. The palmar grasp reflex is an involuntary reaction observed in newborn human infants. When you place a finger or object into a baby's palm, the fingers instinctively close around it with surprising strength. This reflex is present at birth, peaks during the first few weeks of life, and typically fades by around 5 to 6 months of age. This behavior is a vestigial trait inherited from our primate ancestors. In species like chimpanzees, gorillas, and monkeys, newborns must cling tightly to their mother's fur immediately after birth. This ability is essential for survival in the wild, where the mother may need to move quickly or climb while carrying her young. The strong grasp ensures that the infant doesn't fall or become separated during movement. In humans, however, the evolutionary context has changed. Modern infants are not born into environments where they must cling to their caregivers for survival, and caregivers typically carry babies in arms or use external support. Despite the change in lifestyle, the neurological wiring for the grasp reflex remains intact. It is an automatic motor response controlled by the brainstem and spinal cord, independent of conscious control or learned behavior. The palmar grasp reflex is often used in neonatal neurological assessments to confirm proper nervous system function. Its predictable development and gradual disappearance offer useful indicators of brain and nerve health. The reflex eventually gives way to voluntary grasping as the infant's motor control matures. Interestingly, the strength of this primitive grip is disproportionate to a newborn's size. Some infants can support their entire body weight with their grip alone, echoing the critical survival behavior seen in other primates. However, in humans, this strength serves no practical purpose and fades as the brain develops more advanced motor control. Its persistence in the early months of life, and disappearance as conscious motor skills develop, illustrates how evolution retains certain traits long after their survival function is gone. Darwin's tubercle. Darwin's tubercle is a small, painless bump or thickened ridge found on the upper outer rim of the human ear, known as the helix. It's named after Charles Darwin, who proposed that this structure might be a vestige of a larger, more mobile ear in ancestral primates or mammals. In many animals, especially those that rely heavily on acute hearing, like cats, dogs, or primates, ear mobility is crucial. These animals can rotate, flatten, or raise their ears to better detect the direction and source of sounds. In humans, this mobility has been greatly reduced or lost entirely, but remnants like Darwin's tubercle may represent physical traces of that ancestral function. About 10% of the human population has this trait in a noticeable form, though the prevalence can vary depending on genetic background. It can appear on one ear or both and comes in different shapes and sizes, sometimes as a small point, sometimes as a thicker fold. Functionally, Darwin's tubercle serves no purpose in modern humans. The associated ear muscles, the auricular muscles, are generally non-functional as well. While some people can wiggle their ears slightly using these muscles, most cannot control them voluntarily. Interestingly, the presence of Darwin's tubercle is often used in discussions about atavistic traits, features that appear in modern organisms but resemble ancestral conditions. It's also used in some forensic or anthropological studies, although its value is limited due to wide variability and lack of functional significance. In summary, Darwin's tubercle is a minor, inherited quirk, an evolutionary relic of a time when ears played a more active role in survival.